This is CBC Here and Now.
The Diamond family has lived in this home for 40 years, but it turns out they don't own it.
Lottie don't know what's going on, and we don't know what's going on and what's going to happen.
This is a failure of documentation, really, more than anything.
I'm Daryl Roberts, and I'll tell you about their 2-year battle coming up on Here and Now.
This is our largest festival of Hindu calendar. It is Festival of Lights.
And the Hindu temple's Festival of Lights in St. John's was also a major fundraising effort. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We begin tonight in Catalina on the Bonavista Peninsula, where a family has discovered they can't sell their home, the place they've lived for 40 years. And that's because the provincial government is claiming the home sits on Crown land. And as Here Now's Daryl Roberts explains, the problem is even bigger than they realized.
Pauline Diamond has a lot of memories in this house. Her husband, Randy, built it. Her kids grew up in it.
Christmas and birthdays and gathering, anything special came up. It's good memories.
Pauline's daughter has good memories of the house too.
Yeah, so this is my parents' garden that they had.
But about 2 years ago, it was time for her parents to downsize. The house was too big. It was getting harder to walk up and down the stairs. That's when the trouble started.
Even though we've lived here for so long, we paid taxes the whole time. There's never been an issue. But now when they're trying to sell it, for reasons outside of our control, there's issues. We can't do it because the government are saying it's Crown land.
Pauline's father bought this land in the early 80s. They have a deed, but the province says that's not enough, arguing the house is on Crown land, not their land. But they'd already found a buyer. The Hart family fell in love with the home and made an offer. They sold their old house and were ready to move in.
They were as good as gold. I mean, they told us to move in and just take ownership of the house until everything got straightened out. And we're 2 years later and we're still in the same situation.
They're now living in the house. They don't own it either, but they're counting on this one day being settled. The Diamonds have a court date next year, but it'll cost thousands in lawyers' fees. The case will also use another precious resource, time.
I was diagnosed there 3.5 years ago, lung and bone cancer. So
Pauline was given 3 to 5 years to live, and that was in 2019. And it's not just the Diamonds. There are people across rural Newfoundland and Labrador who are living in homes that are on Crown land, and they might not even realize it. Greg French is representing the Diamonds and a dozen others fighting to prove they own their land. In places like Catalina or Bonavista, which have been settled for centuries, the records are poor. He says there are thousands of people in this situation.
Most people are in a state of shock when they're told they don't own their houses according to the law. They've lived on it, they've owned this land for years, they've built on it, they've never set out to steal land. This is a failure of documentation, really, more than anything.
Crown Lands acknowledges the process can be frustrating. The minister wouldn't do an interview, but in a statement, the Crown Lands Division says it has an obligation to contest applications for title if, according to government records, the land is owned by the Crown. The statement also says the Crown Lands Division does not hold up the sale of the land. The decision whether to apply to have land investigated through the courts under the Quieting of Titles Act is between an individual and their private lawyer. French wants the government to change legislation to make that process easier, shorter, and less expensive. For now, Pauline wants to spend what time she has left focused on her family and not a legal battle.
we don't know what's going to happen. But I'm hoping everything will work out for the best anyhow. And I'd like to see it.
Daryl Roberts, CBC News, Catalina.
Well, Derek Bragg is the minister responsible for overseeing Crown land, and speaking to reporters today, Bragg said he couldn't speak directly about the Diamond family's circumstances because that matter is now before the courts, but he agrees land ownership is a complex issue, one that he experiences in his own community.
Need somebody in their mid to late 80s to sign an affidavit on your behalf, right? So, but there's other options. People can go out and actually apply for Crown lands. That upsets a lot of people because you have to actually pay for the land that you're on. But that's the process. If you've been on Crown lands, and you've been illegally on Crown lands, you had to pay the market value for that, plus the application fee, plus the survey. We are looking at ways to make Section 36 a little better, a little easier.
Also, just how is his department hoping to do that? We'll hear more from Minister Bragg on that, as well as why so many people in the province could find themselves in the middle of a similar land dispute. That's ahead in about 35 minutes. In other news, a 26-year-old man has died and a 24-year-old man is in hospital after an ATV crash early this morning on the Southern Avalon. Police say the crash happened around 6 o'clock this morning in Mobile. The RCMP says the ATV left the gravel road and collided with a tree and that the men weren't wearing helmets. Police say the ATV had been stolen back in September. And the RCMP is looking for 2 suspects following a home invasion in Carbonear last night. Police say a woman was at her home on Water Street around 10 o'clock when she answered a knock on the door. Police say 2 masked men assaulted her, entered the home, and stole a number of prescription medications. The RCMP says the woman escaped without injuries, and despite a search, the 2 men were not found. Police do say the incident is not believed to be random, and the investigation is continuing. Right across the country, some Sobeys, Lawtons, and Foodland stores are still unable to fill prescriptions today in the wake of a cybersecurity issue. According to a statement from owner Empire Company Limited, an IT problem is preventing some pharmacies from filling prescriptions. The company says it's working to rectify the problem at all of its stores, but could not estimate when things could be fixed. Over the weekend, some pharmacy staff told the CBC they weren't able to access their computers, but said they could supply customers with a few days' worth of medication if customers had their empty bottles. And that's not all. Maple Leaf Foods announced late last night that a cybersecurity incident caused a system outage at that company. It expects disruptions to services and operations as it works to resolve the outage, but also didn't give a time frame. Maple Leaf has declined an interview.
Well, the weather this weekend certainly didn't feel very November-like. On Saturday, we broke 15 records across the province. Sunday, more records broken. In fact, Wabush at 12.7 degrees broke the all-time record for November. And then today, again, 18 degrees in Gander. That broke a record from 2010. 17.4 degrees was the old record. So definitely lots of heat around. If you take a look at the daytime highs today across the province, at least across the island, into the double digits, 15 degrees in St. John's today, and 11 in Cartwright. Those double-digit temperatures right up across Labrador as well. Happy Valley, Goose Bay at 10, and Lab City, you sat around 8 degrees today. Now, if we take a look at the temperature change, that is nearly 7 or 8 degrees from yesterday. We are looking at a cool down this week. I'll get into the full details coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Now to some politics. The official opposition is calling for an investigation into Brendan Paddock's resignation as the chair of Nalcor. The PCs say it's no coincidence that one of the proponents of a massive wind energy project resigned shortly before the province announced it was lifting a moratorium on wind energy. Here now's Mark Quinn has that story.
The opposition says it has documents it believes reveals Brendan Paddock resigned because of an illegal cabinet leak. Paddock's letter of resignation from Nalcor's board is dated March 24th, the same day the provincial government's cabinet met. A little over a week later, government announced it was lifting the wind energy moratorium. But the opposition believes cabinet actually made its decision on March 24th and that information was shared with Paddock.
That is the question. That is the question. Did someone leak this information? If you did, maybe you need to bring the RCMP, RNC to investigate this further, because cabinet confidentiality is supreme. It should be. I mean, that's our decisions of our government.
The Premier says it's nonsense because it was clear for years before the decision was announced that the moratorium was going to be lifted. He said the opposition is overreaching to score political points.
You can take 2 random dots at any point in time and try to draw a line to them. And, that's fair, I suppose, for the opposition to do, but it's not the case.
Fury also responded again to the Progressive Conservatives' request that he produce receipts to prove that he paid for a trip to a Labrador fishing lodge owned by John Risley. Risley is one of the main players behind a proposal to build a massive wind energy project to produce hydrogen for export. Fury was adamant that he won't table the receipts, repeating, "My dime, my time." Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Representatives from this province will attend the United Nations COP27 climate summit in Egypt. More than 120 global leaders are expected to attend. The Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Bernard Davis, is set to present at a session tomorrow on the importance of deep blue carbon. Meanwhile, today the UN Secretary General delivered a warning to delegates and the world.
We are in the fight of our lives and we are losing. Greenhouse gas emissions keep growing, global temperatures keep rising, and our planet is fast approaching tipping points that will make climate chaos irreversible.
The UN has recently reported that the past 8 years were the warmest ever recorded. The goals of the 12-day conference include having countries commit to new targets for combating climate change. Since last year's conference, many events have hindered these efforts, including the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the global energy crisis. Well, today's release of the Auditor General's report on a performance audit of Nalcor Energy has been postponed. Denise Hanrahan released the first of 2 reports last month, and it was supposed to table the second this afternoon. Her office says today's briefing has been postponed due to unforeseen circumstances, and a new date will be announced in the near future. That first audit found Nalcor consistently overspent on employee perks and contractors in a 5-year sample period. The Crown Corporation spent about $240,000 a year on gifts, parties, and golf fees for employees, and used taxpayer money to buy alcohol and cigars. Well, it was all in a Sunday's work for Newfoundland and Labrador's curling superstars. Playing as Team Canada, the Brad Guzhu rink from St. John's won the inaugural Pan-Continental Curling Championship in Calgary yesterday. They dominated the team from South Korea in the final, winning 11-3. The South Koreans shook hands after 8 ends. The team of Brad Guzhu, Mark Nichols, Jeff Walker, and E.J. Harnden only dropped 1 game throughout the tournament. Next on the schedule for Team Guzhu is the World Financial Group Masters in Oakville in December. Well, an auto body shop in St. John's is accepting applications for its annual Christmas car giveaway. Each year, Collision Clinic staff refurbish a car to give to someone who needs it. This is the 19th year they've been doing it. The company takes a car that's been damaged and then they rebuild it. Collision Clinic says it's now accepting applications for this year, and you can nominate someone at the company's website. The deadline is next Monday. Well, the Hindu temple in St. John's raised an impressive $14,000 this weekend for Fiona victims. More than 200 people attended the Diwali celebrations at the temple on Saturday, and organizers say they wish they could accommodate even more. The Festival of Lights fell on October 24th this year, but the annual event was delayed by a week, all for Fiona fundraising.
This is our largest festival of Hindu calendar. We celebrate many festivals throughout the year, but this being the largest one, and this is called Diwali. It is Festival of Lights. That's what we are celebrating here today. But the community has really grown because a lot of students are at the Memorial University. There are a lot of new immigrants to Newfoundland who have decided to make Newfoundland their home. So we actually run into a great difficulty at Diwali time because our temple's capacity is for 230 people due to fire regulations. So we cannot even accommodate everyone who do want to come or who does want to come for the Diwali celebration. They have decorated the hall, they have freshly painted the hall because it's part of Diwali also brings like, let's clean the physical space, our minds and our souls as well. Diwali actually was on 24th of October. We typically celebrate it the following Saturday after that day. However, this time we are delayed by a week because we wanted to do Fiona relief fundraiser. One of the part of Diwali is giving to our neighbors, giving to our community for the well-being of all. So because of Fiona, where he hit our province, our neighbors were really affected. So we chose to delay our celebration by a week and dedicate that actual weekend for Fiona, fund relief. How many times each one of us tell us, what can I do? This word is too difficult to deal with. Well, that light within you lights another light on the right path, and yet another, and yet another. Many of you may not know that yet, but through all of your efforts, we raised $14,000. And I wish our temple was larger. I would love to see our neighbors and our neighbors' children experience, what Diwali is all about. But at this current moment, we are barely able to accommodate the community which is here of East Indian origin.
Well, as I mentioned, the temple raised $14,000 for victims of Fiona. Organizers say some money will also be donated to the gathering place, as well as the Memorial University Food Bank, which had to shut down late last month due to an overwhelming demand.
Well, the temperatures have been very mild over the last couple of days, but that's going to change. Temperatures dramatically drop through the week, even some snow in the forecast. I'll get into the details coming up.
Time for a look at the weather. It was another balmy day almost in St. John's. Couldn't get over how warm it is, and everyone's talking about the weather right now.
Talking about it. Yeah, even walking the dogs this morning, it was humid.
Yeah.
It's very weird for the first week of
weird.
November. Yeah. Typically we sit around 8 degrees here in St. John's. That's somewhere around there through across the rest of the island, and then up across Labrador, you're typically sitting between -2 and -3. And temperatures today, take a look at the daytime highs today. 10 degrees in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and 8 in Lab City. So we're definitely seeing this warm air, and you can see it all the way through the Maritime provinces, down along to the States, even in Ontario, 13 to 16 degrees. But in behind that, as you can see, Thunder Bay, Moosonee, you're looking at temperatures 2 to 5 degrees, and that cooler air will eventually move in, and we're already starting to see that up through parts of northern Labrador between 1 and 2 degrees right now in Hopedale and Nain, Makovic at 4 as well. And that cooler air has started to move in for Lab City as well. So this will sweep through as we head through tonight in behind this cold front as that moves through. So all that warm air out ahead of it is bringing some showers as well to parts of the province, and will continue to do so as we head through the evening hours tonight. Now, as that front starts to move through, out ahead of that, we're going to see some pretty gusty winds through the overnight tonight. Areas along southern Avalon may see some gusty winds as well, in excess of 80 kilometers per hour. Otherwise, between 60 to 80, pretty much right across the board. And then as we head into tomorrow, winds will start to ramp up for southeastern portions of Labrador and the northern peninsula east in the Canada Bay area particularly. We could be seeing those gusts in excess of 100 kilometers per hour. Environment Canada does have a wind warning in place for those areas as well. Cartwright through to the Strait, northern peninsula east and Port aux Basques area, where you will see those gusts somewhere between tonight and tomorrow, gusting around 100 kilometers per hour. We do have a couple special weather statements as well, particularly Eagle River. As we head through the night, we could see some significant snowfall areas to the east, inland, and in higher elevations. We could see somewhere between 5 to 10, maybe even 15 centimeters of snow. But again, in that higher elevation, that will be where you see the most significant snowfall. Areas along the Long Range Mountains may pick up some snowfall as well as we head into Tuesday. Taking a look at what's going on right now, we do have some showers working their way across eastern areas of the island as well as the south, and that will continue to track across as we head through the evening hours tonight. Maybe heavy at times, we could pick up somewhere between 5 to 10 millimeters, but in those heavier showers, we could see 15 to 20 millimeters of rain, and then there's that snow in behind it. Now, eventually we are into a clearing trend through the overnight through central and eastern Newfoundland, but particularly 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And that's good news if you want to check out the total lunar eclipse tonight. Now, it is going to be very low on the horizon. As you can see, the moon sets tomorrow morning at around 7 a.m. So if you are going to go check this out, 6:46 is when you'll start to see that moon turn red. It'll be a maximum visible eclipse here in St. John's at 6:51. But again, you're going to have to be very high up and facing west in order to see it because the moon will be very low on the horizon. So if you do get a chance to see it, it probably won't be super significant, but it'll be your last chance till 2025 if you do want to see that total lunar eclipse. Temperatures tonight going to drop between 3 and 8 degrees. We're looking at temperatures around -5 for St. John's, otherwise 1 to 2 degrees. And then tomorrow, as that colder air moves in, the potential for some flurries across the island certainly very possible, particularly into the afternoon hours and even into the evening hours as we start to see some of that colder air move in. Temperatures tomorrow, not really very significant, 4 to 8 degrees. This is right around where we should be sitting this time of year. Again, very blustery day tomorrow with those winds out of the west or northwest, gusting between 70 and 80 kilometers per hour, some areas in excess of 100. And up across Labrador between 0 and 3 degrees. Again, that potential for some flurries and even some showers. Now, this trend is going to continue. We'll talk about the long-range forecast when I come back.
Someone told us that if you ever encounter a moose, do not honk because that is an act of aggression. You're challenging the moose, so they'll run at you if it's mating season. And then I asked them, when is it mating season? And they said, all the time. So We're learning stuff.
Kind of sounds like my ex, to be honest.
Come to the show.
Well, these three comedians are learning a little bit about Newfoundland. They drove in from Corner Brook today to St. John's. They're going to be performing here at Erin's Pub tonight, their final show in the province. That's coming up. Three comedians with very diverse backgrounds have been touring in Newfoundland the past few days. They all grew up in Ontario, but their family roots are in India, Sudan, and Egypt. Their comedy tour is called They're Going Places, and the last performance is tonight at Erin's Pub in St. John's. I caught up with Abbas Wahab, Jesse Singh, and Mo Ismail this afternoon after their long drive from Corner Brook to St. John's, and I asked them to describe what kind of comedy people will see tonight.
Well, you know, this is pretty much a tour of three bald guys, just trying to go around, increase diversity numbers, you know, and just trying to get bars some grants, you know what I mean? So we're just trying to help the people out here. If you're watching this right now, leave to Erin's Pub right now. The show starts in like 20 minutes.
And how long is the show?
Usually about 90 minutes. It's going to be 3 of us doing about 25, 30 minutes apiece. And as you can see, we do it in the order of the transition of the beard. We go from mustache, goatee, full-fledged. You know?
You guys are pretty diverse, though. How did you end up coming together and to put this tour together?
Well, it all started in an ESL class back in 1996.
He's not kidding.
No, we've all been doing comedy for a number of years, and you know, I perform with these guys for the better part of the last decade, and we've all been all over the country. We've done all sorts of major festivals, and Abbas just recently did the Winnipeg Comedy Festival. He's got an episode of The Debaters. Shout out CBC, The Debaters. And Jesse over here is he has a new short film that just came out called Tales from the Mandem. And look out for that. And I just finished co-headlining a bunch of shows at Just for Laughs this past year. So yeah, we're doing things.
So tell me about your comedy. What kind of comedy do you do?
Honestly, a lot of it is just therapy for me. So it's not this is just, this is cheaper. It's just, a lot of it is just about stories about growing up, you know what I mean? Being diverse, like being a diverse troupe in Toronto, kind of going around. A lot of it encompasses things about growing up in immigrant families, but a lot of it is things that people can relate to, relationships, struggles with parents, things of that nature, and majority of it is life experiences. Like, one of the biggest things I think I love about comedy is storytelling, and when someone can be vulnerable and just themselves on stage and find a way to unify people from different backgrounds, different sectors, and that's one of the biggest things that I love. So
I've been doing stand-up for about 12 years now. I just recently dropped a live comedy album called Homeroom Habibi. So during the evenings I do stand-up, but during the day I'm actually an elementary school teacher. So on the album I touch up on elements of that, dealing with difficult students, because I myself was a difficult student. So trying to grapple with that a little bit, and obviously different experiences from being Egyptian, growing up in the West, and just trying to figure it all out.
I'm an immigrant. I'm originally from Sudan. I was raised in London, Ontario, and I've kind of had my hands in a lot of little careers. I was in the Naval Reserves for 6 years. I was an engineer for 3 years, and I pretty much left all those careers to pursue stand-up, and now I'm an actor as well, which I've got some credits and stuff which I put up. I don't want to blab about them, but
Strange New Worlds. I'm a Trekkie. So.
Yeah. So you know about that? Yeah, there you go. They did their research. You were waiting for that. Why don't you just open with that, Carolyn? Just open with that.
It just turns into a Nardwuar interview.
Yeah. But that episode's not out. It's season 2, episode 1, which I guess will come out next year. But I actually put out an album myself a couple months back. It's called Safe Black, which is pretty much the experience I've had in the acting industry and touching on that. And pretty much my comedy just talks about my immigrant experience, of the duality of having this back home style, living in the house, among living in a pretty average Canadian town, and what that's like, and my careers and where I'm at now, and pretty much the life of being bald, to be honest. I mean, that's a lot of it's about being bald. I'll be honest with you, Cameron. In fact, most of it.
And is this your first time to Newfoundland?
Yes.
Yes, it
absolutely.
is.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience so far, because you were here, you played a show here last week, and then you actually got on the highway and drove out to the West Coast. So tell us about that trip.
We hit the road. We did Gander. We did Friday. We were here at Aaron's Pub. Had an amazing show, amazing turnout, and that's why we were doing another one. Then we hit Gander, the Oasis Lounge. That was interesting. Let's just say we came from away, and we had an experience there. And then Corner Brook, which was a blast as well. And this morning we drove all the way back just to make it for this interview, which we appreciate big time. But we all did the screech, and we got our certificates. So I think that means people legally have to show up.
Yeah. You're one of us now. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
So what was it like driving across? It's a long drive. It's a hard drive.
Oh. The hills were beautiful, though, man. I think.
Luckily, we're all Uber drivers anyways, so it just,
this was,
you know what I mean? So we already put the hours in.
Yeah. The anger kind of came out because we're like, no one has the meter running. Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Buddy, unprofessional.
What did you make of the place?
You guys are nice.
Super nice.
But there's like, I feel like you guys got some secrets. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost too nice. Like, what's going on? Why is everybody so nice? You know, what are you compensating for? You know, so.
What's going on under the surface?
A little bit. The houses, everybody's lawn is trimmed. Everybody's smiling. All that. I don't know what's going on here. But
Pleasantville kind of thing.
a little bit, yeah.
It's a little suspicious.
Feels like an episode of Goosebumps. Like you walk up to someone smiling and they're just a mannequin. They're not even, you know, it's just like, you know, like we're living in the Truman Show. But
So tell us again now how people can come out and see you tonight.
Show up to Aaron's Pub, 7 p.m. If you're watching this, it's probably, 6:55? So I'm sure you live 800 meters away. So get the shoes on, lace them up, and walk on over.
You guys are funny guys. I'm sure the show is going to be great tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, tomorrow on CBC Radio's Labrador Morning, RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki in Happy Valley Goose Bay as residents call for increased policing. Hear from the Commissioner tomorrow.
She lives in the woods by herself and raises all kinds of animals without electricity.
I like a challenge.
Sunday at 11:30 and Monday at 7.
Returning now to our top story about a Catalina couple who've been told they're not allowed to sell their family home, a place they've lived in for 4 decades. The province says that home is built on Crown land and it was never really theirs to begin with. Land titles, it's a tangly issue in many parts of the province, and today Minister Derek Bragg told reporters the Diamond family is not alone in their plight.
I live in the community of Greenspan, which would be similar to, I'm thinking, Bonavista, settled in 1697. So there's some places where we can have from 57 to 77, you can prove that it's been clear title, that people have lived on it for all of these years. That's proven to be a little more problematic now because you need somebody in their mid to late 80s to sign an affidavit on your behalf, right? So, but there's other options. People can go out and actually apply for Crown lands. That upsets a lot of people because you have to actually pay for the land that you're on. But that's the process. If you've been on Crown lands, and you've been illegally on Crown lands, you had to pay the market value for that, plus the application fee, plus the survey. Sometimes they'll say, well, I've been living in my town for 20 years, living here, been paying property tax on this piece of property, how come it's not mine? We are looking at ways to make Section 36 a little better, a little easier. Sometimes it's family matters. Could have been a grandfather to pass it down to 3 sons and $3, and they subdivided it basically with a handshake. And then me, being the grandson, ends up on my dad's land. And it's like, how do we figure all this out? That's some of the complexities that we run into within the province. So we're looking at that. We're about ready, not let the cat out of the bag, I guess, too far. We're about to go out and do some consultation on that and get some feedback from the people. But I know it, and I live it in my town. You need to be old enough to be able to remember. Many people have either passed on, moved away, or the memory is not as clear as it used to be. So we have old aerial photographs. Lots of times will show that someone lived here, but other times will also show there were numerous properties there. Like you can pick out any rural community of this province that was settled back in the early 1700s, 1800s, and you would see numerous homes would be sitting on properties that people actually think they own and may own because they may have a grant from King Henry that would have came forward. Chains and Links comes to mind. I've saw grants. I worked with the town for 30 years before this, and I saw numerous old grants would have come out counting Chains and Links. So I can't do the conversion on that, but surveyors have figured it out. I wouldn't be one bit surprised if the older parts of this city you would find clear ownership to be somewhat, if it was passed down through families, like where did we lose it? And did the right documentation come true after a loved one passed? And if they passed without any will, how does it go? And it's great, that was great years ago. My parents got an home, I'll be honest, in the early 60s was an handshake. A gentleman was getting on the ferry and they said to my father, Stu, you can have the house. And that was it. That's all he had. So you got a bill of sale sometime later. So that wouldn't be uncommon in rural Newfoundland to see sort of thing like that go on.
Well, tonight on Go Public, an Ontario family is living in the basement of their home because tenants occupying the main floor refuse to leave and have stopped paying rent. To make matters worse, it will take months to have the dispute heard by a tribunal thanks to a backlog of cases. The CBC's Erica Johnson has more with this investigation.
That was my daughter's room.
Hassan Khan, his wife and 3 children used to live on the main floor of their house. But for the past 6 months, they've been in the basement.
Yeah, even the mattresses, it's like one of them is thicker than the other one.
Tenants they rented their house to during a trip to India have refused to leave since May and no longer pay the $2,400 rent.
Yeah, thank you.
Go Public asked Khan's tenants for answers.
He wants you guys to leave now. Why won't you do that?
Next coming February we will leave.
Endless excuses and no rent are taking a toll. Khan's filed a complaint with the LTB, Ontario's Landlord and Tenant Board, to get his renters evicted, but says that didn't bother them.
He literally laughed on my face. It's gonna take at least 6, 7, 8 months. Go to LTB, do whatever you want. So that was his words.
The case backlog's the result of the tribunal temporarily shutting down in the pandemic and the Ontario government freezing eviction orders. Wait times for hearings between property owners and tenants are growing at dispute tribunals across the country.
You're pretty much at their mercy. When they get to your application, they get to your application, and definitely government has heard from us in terms of how long that's been taking.
Our request for an interview at Ontario's Landlord and Tenant Board was declined.
We've been trying for weeks to get someone from the tribunal to talk to us. There's no one available?
I understand that, and unfortunately.
The Ontario government says it's working to cut the long list of cases, but says that takes time. As for Con, 4 months after applying for a hearing, he's still waiting for a date.
He's waiting for something else, too. November's rent. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, the union representing education support workers in Ontario has accepted a proposal from the provincial government. It will end a 2-day work stoppage that saw hundreds of thousands of students shut out of class. Earlier today, Premier Doug Ford offered to back away from controversial legislation that imposed a contract and made it illegal for the workers to strike.
As a gesture of good faith, our government is willing to rescind the legislation. We're willing to rescind Section 33, but only if QP agrees to show a similar gesture of good faith by stopping their strike.
The Ford government passed the legislation known as Bill 28 last week. It also invoked the notwithstanding clause in the Constitution in an effort to preempt legal challenges. The support workers, including custodians, teaching assistants, and others who are members of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, ignored the law and walked out on Friday. The union called the action a political protest. And while Premier Ford was making his announcement, education workers and their supporters were gathering outside the Ontario legislature for another day of protest. But once the union received written confirmation of Ford's offer, it announced the demonstrations would come to an end and it would resume bargaining.
As a gesture of good faith to this announcement, CUPE OSBCU will be collapsing our protest sites starting tomorrow. We hope that this gesture is met with the same good faith by this government in a new proposal at the bargaining table as soon as possible. And I will be clear, we're here waiting right now. The time is ticking.
Well, the union says the support workers will be back in schools tomorrow. In other news, the inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act has turned its attention to protest blockades at border crossings. The economically vital Ambassador Bridge between Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan was closed for several days in February. Protesters opposed to government COVID-19 restrictions blocked roads on the Canadian side of the bridge, bringing cross-border traffic to a halt. But the demonstrators were cleared out before the Emergencies Act came into force. The CBC's David Cochran has the details.
The aftermath of the blockade at the Ambassador Bridge. Protesters shut down the world's busiest trade corridor and sent police and politicians scrambling.
One of the folks involved threatened to, I think it was to bomb my house or do something like that. And so, we woke up and all of a sudden there are 2 or 3 police cars around our house for several weeks.
There was no actual bomb, but the blockade amounted to an economic one, stopping $500 million of daily trade. Canada's critical auto sector was the most directly affected, but not just the existing business.
This is one of the largest investments in Windsor's history.
Dilkins revealed that during the blockade, talks were ongoing to finalize this deal for a $5 billion electric vehicle battery plant.
That this could have been derailed. If they had looked at this and taken a perspective that we don't want this hassle, it's just easier to do business in the United States.
The economic stakes different than in Ottawa, but so was the response. Ottawa's police plagued by infighting and inaction that lasted weeks. Windsor police knew right away they needed help and asked for it, then agreed that the Ontario Provincial Police would take the lead on clearing the bridge.
We did not have that experience, and
we were asking for help.
In lockstep, the city and the auto sector went to court and got an injunction, determined not to repeat Ottawa's mistakes.
The largest lesson learned was not to let this grow. Don't let bouncy castles and hot tubs and sort of those types of amenities come to the streets.
A week in, police made their move. By the 13th of February, the bridge was open. The Ambassador Bridge was cleared the day before the Emergencies Act was invoked, so its powers were never used in Windsor. Though Dilkin said it sent a message of deterrence that may have stopped protesters from regrouping and trying to block it a second time. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, American voters go to the polls in their midterm elections tomorrow. The vote will determine whether the Democrats and President Joe Biden will keep control of Congress. Poll results tend to be favoring the Republicans. The CBC's Magda Gabrisalasa has the latest from Washington.
It's the last chance for candidates and their big-name supporters to convince voters to back them. Now, with Congress, all the House seats are up for grabs and 35 of the Senate seats. And there are some tight races to watch, including the Senate race in Georgia, where Democrat Raphael Warnock is trying to hang on against Republican candidate Herschel Walker. In Pennsylvania, Democrat John Fetterman is up against Dr. Mehmet Oz, and that race drew out the presidents this weekend. The tag team of former President Barack Obama and President Joe Biden had Fetterman's back, and former President Donald Trump was there for Oz. And last night, Biden was in New York, warning again about how democracy is at risk, while Trump was in Miami rallying support for Republican candidates.
This election isn't a referendum, it's a choice. It's a choice between two fundamentally different visions of America.
You need to vote every Democrat out of office and vote for Republicans up and down the ballot.
It's widely believed that Republicans will likely take the House, if not the Senate, too. Now, the security of these elections is an issue, with the big lie of a stolen 2020 election and other conspiracy theories swirling. Officials are preparing to step up safety measures for voters and election officials. With early voting, some 40 million people have already made their picks. As for getting the results, it is possible that we may have to wait several days. Magda Gabrisalasa, CBC News, Washington.
before we get to the weather, just have a look at this incredible footage from the Canso Causeway in Cape Breton yesterday. Nature photographer Simon Detremont got this shot of a lifetime here. This is an Atlantic common thresher shark jumping right out of the water. Just incredible. And if you look at the bottom, you can see what Detremont believes to be a lamprey attached to the shark. He says he saw the shark jump the first time, so he set up his camera and was able to get this shot. Wow. You don't often see a shark jumping out of the water like that, my goodness.
No, that was impressive.
Yeah, so we've been talking so much about the warm temperatures. How much longer, well, I know you said earlier it's going to be changing tomorrow, pretty chilly tomorrow, but is this going to stay that way?
Yeah, it's going to stay like that for most of the week. Unfortunately, we are looking at that chance of flurries continuing pretty much across the province as well as we head into Wednesday. So let's take a look at the future tracker just to show you what's going on. So the area of low pressure that move through tonight and into tomorrow will move offshore, but eventually the winds will ease as well through the day on Wednesday. But still looking at that potential for flurries along coastal areas of Labrador as well as along the northeast coast of the island through a good chunk of the afternoon on Wednesday. Then we see another system bring in the potential for some snow or flurries for the western portion of Labrador as well through the day on Wednesday. Temperatures for you will be significantly cooler than it has been, -5 as your daytime high on Wednesday in Lab City. The rest of Labrador, similar temperatures, except southeastern portions, you'll see your temperatures above 0, but just barely, between 1 and 3 degrees. And that's the story across the island as well. Not really seeing that mercury move too much. With that chance of flurries pretty much across the board at times, again along the coast and the west coast as well. Otherwise, we'll see some peaks of sun in the mix through the day on Wednesday. Now, into Wednesday evening, Thursday, we will see those flurries and or light snow move across the Big Land, head towards the west coast. Areas in the higher elevations will likely see some accumulating snow with this one. And then otherwise, closer to the surface, the better chance of seeing some showers through the day. And that's really the story for most of the island as we head through the afternoon on Thursday, and those temperatures will sit again just barely above 0 for most cases. So between 2 to 6 or 7 degrees, warmest along the south coast and eastern portion of the island. Otherwise, temperatures again up across Labrador below 0 for most of you, except in the west where you'll hover around 2 degrees through the day in Lab City on your Thursday. Taking a look at the long range forecast. Pretty chilly, single digits. This is going to feel significantly colder considering we've been seeing these mild temperatures. This is even a little bit below seasonable, particularly on Wednesday. But overall, the weekend at this point looking unsettled with some showers Friday, Saturday, 4 degrees. So a wet, cool weekend for the most part with those temperatures overnight between 0 and +1. As far as central and western Newfoundland goes, again, you're looking at the better chance of some flurries, particularly in the evening and morning hours, just because temperatures will be hovering around 0 or even below 0 in that case, but it will be an unsettled week for the most part. As far as eastern Labrador goes, we'll see some flurries on Friday, otherwise quiet weather, but cold. Overnight lows again dipping into the minus double digits at this point, so very much feeling like November weather. And then for western Labrador, the sun may peek out for you on Friday, but otherwise a gray and cloudy and flurry forecast for you. I wanted to share this photo. This is some caribou in Stephenville Crossing. I thought this was a great shot. We see some of those fall colors in the background there as well. Thank you so much to Toby for sharing that great shot with us. And if you have any you'd like to share with us, send them to my Facebook page, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
They certainly won't mind the cooler temperatures on the way.
No, they will not.
Well, that's almost it for us on this Monday. It kind of feels like a Monday today.
Definitely a Monday.
I don't know. I think it's like the clock change on the weekend. It feels like it's kind of thrown off my schedule. I don't know how you're feeling.
Yeah, I think it actually might be the first time that I actually felt it. I don't think I've ever noticed it before, but today particularly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But
and I feel like people are kind of tired. Anyways, that's it for us. Good night, everyone.
Good night.